Hello and welcome to the workshop. One of the viewers of the channel wrote to me asking if I could make a video about how I make my French cleats, the wall cleat parts, and because I make them a little differently to most people, I thought, yeah, why not, of course. Now the majority of people, from what I can see online, choose to use 3/4 inch Baltic birch ply, and where I live that's fearlessly expensive. It's well over $200 a sheet, and I can buy 3/4 timber, this is 4 inches wide, for about $4 a length. So the ply option works out about 5 times more expensive, and if you're a regular viewer to the channel, you know I like to save money where I can. So yep, this is what I use, 3/4 by 4 inch planed all round, so that's not the actual size. Now there are some caveats to using this, because not all timbers are the same by any stretch, and when you're at the box store, certainly where I buy it, I think where most people are going to buy this sort of timber, you're going to need to pay some attention when you're pulling the timber from the rack. First of all, because it's not all the same size. In fact, it's surprisingly different. Width wise, doesn't really matter the differences, but here I've got from 15.4 millimeters up to, in fact, 20 millimeters. This is the thickness. So this is a huge difference between these two pieces. This is the end of this, and this is another piece. Got over 5 mil difference here, which is getting on for 1/4 inch. And if I was to not pay attention and to rip these into wall cleats, my tool holders on this one would be further out from the wall than this one. So, you know, pay some attention to the thickness. The width doesn't matter as much because we're going to do something about that. Now there are some other things to bear in mind. Obviously you don't want timber that is wavy this way or bent this way, or like this piece. I don't think you're going to be able to see that, but this is twisted, so that's not suitable for making cleats. And you don't want bits that are full of loose knots or really big knots, because they're not going to be as strong. Now the thing to bear in mind here when you're at the box store is crappy wood like this is exactly the same price as a good piece. So take your time, try and get, you know, fairly standard thickness. Most of it is going to be the same thickness. I think this is an anomaly, but it was all in the same stack, this. But you're going to come across plenty of bits that are like this. And also you want to pay a bit of attention to where in the log that the piece of timber has been cut from, because you will find a lot of pieces like this where it's not square at the edges, and this piece has been sawn from the outside of the log, so it's not square like these other pieces. So spend a little bit of time there, because you'll get a better quality timber if you just spend a bit of time instead of just grabbing the first X amount of planks that are available to you. And that will make your life easier when you're working with the wood. I mean, this is good for pretty much nothing, to be honest. And this is okay. I can use this for something, but it's not going to match the rest of my wall cleats. So that's the first thing. So when it comes to ripping these down into wall cleats, I see overcomplicated formulas on the internet about how to find the center of the plank when the blade's over at 45 degrees, and it's irrelevant really, because these are all sorts of different widths. This one here is 93.8 millimeters and this is 95.3, so it's 1.5 mil difference. So I can use a fancy formula to find the center of one of them maybe, but when I put the next one through, it's not going to be in the center. So let's talk about how I do that. All I do, obviously with a pencil, not with this pen, but to show you a little bit more clearly, I'd find the rough center of the board this way, and let's say the centre this way, like so, and then I'd mark it at 45 degrees, but with a tool. So, you know, I'm finding that, but relatively accurately. And then I'm going to flip the saw to 45 degrees and show you how I cut it. So I flipped the saw to 45 degrees and checked it to see that it is 45 degrees, just with a square, so to speak, 45 degree miter. And what I've done is I've roughly lined up the saw, and well, the fence and the saw, so it's going to cut pretty much on that 45 degree line that I made. Now, as I say, it's not actually crucial whether it's a little bit this way or a little bit that way, and we'll come on to that. So let's sort out my ear defenders, and I'll cut that, and then we can discuss the next step. So we now have two wall cleats ready to go, sort of, but they're not the same size. We haven't paid attention to that yet. Now, one other thing to bear in mind is that when you're cutting longer pieces of this, you know, I've got 8 feet I'm buying there, but I could buy 3.4 meters, which is considerably longer again. And what can happen is, as you're pushing this through the saw, like so, but a long length, you can get the equivalent of planer snipe, because you've got tons of wood sticking out the end here and not much fence to support it as it gets to the end. And I'm certainly not leaning over here trying to support this with the saw blade up like this, so I'm only pushing from here, so you can get a bit of wobble with such an overhang. And you're going to want to check let's show you what I do using the square. Now, it's probably not happened here in this case because it's a fairly short piece, but you do want to check, and sometimes you'll find that this piece is one way or the other, so I would cut that off. I wouldn't use that as part of my cleat. So these two I've put through, but as you saw, this one was slightly a different width. So if I put this through, the 4 that I end up with aren't going to be the same size. So I'm going to put the saw back to level, and I'll show you what I do next. So I've put the saw blade back up to vertical. Before I do anything else, I'm just going to take a bit of sandpaper. I think this is 120 grit, but I'm just going to knock the edge off of that slightly. And put this up against the blade and come across so it's just tight. And then I'm going to take off just maybe another 1 or 2 mil. And then I'm going to run that through the saw again, and if I do however many and run them through the saw, I know that they are all the identical height. And this then helps with setting out accurately. And if you know my French cleat system, I like to set out accurately. In fact, I've just done an installation of some sunglasses holders for a shop, and I've used just a 3mm shadow gap. So obviously with 3mm shadow gap, it's essential that the cleats are accurately cut for setting out. Otherwise you're going to find that they start at 3mm and go up to maybe more, or you end up with bows or whatever. So it's essential that they're all the same. So I'll put the headphones on, the ear defenders on, run these couple through, and then we'll discuss the next stage. So that's those cut. What I would do again is just take off any sharp corners. I then get a measure, and I would measure this short side, which is only roughly, it's roughly 36 mil. So then I'm going to mark a line 18 mil, so half of what that was. All the way along. Oh, broke my pencil. I have to re-sharpen that, but well. So now I have a line 18 mil up, which is half of this distance, and this is where I'll be drilling the holes that I'm going to mount it on the wall. I mean, obviously I'm working on a short piece here, so that it's easy for you to see instead of me waving around the 8 foot or longer piece of timber, but that's what I would do. And then next up, bearing in mind that it's in actual fact 8 feet long, I would, at 4 feet, which in this case is going to be half of that, I need a longer. So at 4 feet, but in this case just I'm going to do halfway. So I want to drill a hole here halfway, and then you're going to set out, depending on what sort of wall. The wall I was putting into the other day, I could put fixings wherever I like, and I was only using really light cleats on the sunglasses holders. So I put one in the middle, and I put one at about 70 or 80 mil in, something like that, at both ends. Some of you, like in my workshop, I'm on drywall with 600mm centre timber framing. So obviously if I put one in the centre, this is going to be 300 out from here and 300 out from here and so on. And each workshop or application, installation is going to be slightly different. But I'll always start with one in the middle. And the reason for that is that when you start cutting down these 8 feet, 10 feet, 12 feet lengths of timber, because of the nature of wood and the fibres, it has a tendency to bow when it's cut down the length. And obviously we don't want bowing, we want them to be straight. So what I do is I fix the centre one first, and then, let me just show you. Just use this short one, but using my long 8 feet level, and I've got this screwed to the wall now, I clamp here and here until this is straight, because obviously this is a straight edge on the level. So I've screwed in here, this is much longer and so is the level, but I clamp this down here and here, and that straightens this piece of timber out perfectly. I can then use the bubble to make sure that this cleat is level on the wall, and then I can screw in here and wherever it might be, but I would start with the end one. So I start with the middle, clamp, make sure it's level, and then mark the holes. Because I've still only got one centre, I can lift this up like this and drill this hole. I can drop this down and drill this hole because I've marked them when it was level. I hope that's clear. I haven't got anywhere in the workshop to actually screw this in the wall and show you. But so once again, this is screwed into the wall. I then offer the long level up and clamp it at both ends, just with quick release clamps, and that will straighten the piece of timber to the straight edge of the level. And because this is screwed and this is clamped, I can now adjust the level until it's bang on level, and I can mark these holes that I've got where I'm going to fix. I can go through and tap a screw with a hammer, and it's going to leave a mark in the wall. I can then go like this because this is the only point where it's fixed, and I can drill these holes. I can then do this and drill these holes. I can then offer it up, make sure it's level again, and screw in to the actual fixings. And that's how I make my wall cleats and install them. It couldn't be simpler. Now there is one other thing. So that's the first one done. Now you have two choices. You can fix the bottom cleat first and use spacers, or you can use the top cleat and use different sorts of spacers. So let me show you that now. So the other day when I was fixing the sunglasses holders, I fitted the bottom one first, and I had pre-made spacers, one here, and I put one there. This is all on the wall, and then that leaves me to the next cleat. I can also check the middle then, so I can fix the ends because these are at the ends, and I can then use the level to straighten it if there's any bow in the timber, in the wall cleat. The other way, which I do with my Neat French Cleat system, is I fix this to the top cleat. I install that first, and then I use my cleat spacers that are available on the website, as you can see that, and I hang that off the top, and the next cleat will go in there and the next one there, and that's what gives me perfect spacings for my Neat French Cleat system. Now how do you find the spacings? Let's have a look at that. In this case, for what I just worked on, obviously if you're using my Neat French Cleat system and downloading the plans, you can use my spacer and you don't need to worry about working out cleat spacings. But with the installation of the sunglasses holders, I had to work out what the spacings would be, and I did it mathematically, and then I just built a mock-up like so, just putting in 4 short lengths of cleat, and then I could hang 2 of the cleats on and make sure that I had the 3mm shadow gap that I was looking for. Now if you already have cleats on your workshop wall and they're at say 6 or 8 inches from point to point, you can always mock up something like this with short lengths of cleat and replicate whatever your wall hangings are, and then I would make some very short French cleats. So it's going to be a bit like that and like this. I would make 2 of those, making sure that these edges are square so that they're absolutely level, and I would hang one on there and one on here, and then I would measure from the top of this one to the top of the one that's down here, and I would minus the shadow gap that I want, and then I would make all of my wall cleats that size, and I wouldn't have to be worrying about voids, dead zones, etc. If you see my other videos, you know what I mean by that, but I can show you that now. So if this one was on here and this one's like here, you can see I've got dead zones here where I can't fit anything. So if you mock up something like this, then you can avoid that because you'll know that your ideal spaces align to the spacings on your wall. I hope that's clear. Anybody got any questions, then please just drop something in the comments below. I'll answer everybody. If you found this video useful, please like and subscribe. It makes a huge difference to my channel. If you'd like to know more about the Neat French Cleat system, then please visit the website. And that's about it for this video. As always, I've been Alan, you've been watching, and I'll see you in the next video.